Why are you always the one asking questions in your friendships? You're the one who checks in first, who asks how work's been, how their relationship is going, whether that stressful situation they mentioned last month ever got resolved. You remember details that weren't even important at the time, like the name of their boss or the city their cousin moved to. Meanwhile, weeks go by, and they still haven't asked you how you're actually doing. Not in a deep way, not even in a basic way, and at some point you start to notice that if you didn't ask anything at all, the conversation probably wouldn't happen. This usually hits people in very ordinary moments. You're sitting across from a friend at lunch, nodding while they talk about their job for the 15th time. You ask follow-ups because silence would feel awkward otherwise. They talk some more, the check comes, you stand up, and as you walk to your car, you realize they never once asked what you've been up to. Or you're texting. You send something like, "How's everything going lately?" They reply with a long message about their week. You respond thoughtfully and ask another question. They answer again, and then the conversation just ends. No, how about you? No curiosity at all. And you're left staring at your phone thinking, do they even notice this? A lot of the time, this doesn't mean the person is secretly awful. It usually means they're operating on autopilot. Some people are extremely inward focused when they communicate. They don't sit there thinking, I should ask a question back. They just respond to what's in front of them. If you ask them something, they answer. If you don't, they assume there's nothing to talk about. These are the kinds of people who will talk for 10 minutes straight if you keep prompting them, but won't notice that they've done all the talking. It's not cruelty, it's self-absorption mixed with habit. Other times, it's about emotional discomfort, and this shows up in very specific ways. Asking questions, even simple ones, can accidentally turn a casual conversation into something heavier. A question like, "How are you doing?" can quickly become a story about stress, loneliness, relationship problems, or uncertainty. Some people don't know how to sit with that. They worry about saying the wrong thing, giving bad advice, or getting pulled into a conversation they don't know how to end. So instead of opening that door, they keep talking about themselves. It feels safer to stay in familiar territory where they already know the details and don't have to respond to someone else's emotions. Talking about their own life lets them stay in control of the conversation, avoid awkward pauses, and bypass situations where someone might expect empathy, reassurance, or depth they don't feel equipped to give. Then there are people who are just socially passive. They don't initiate conversations, they don't steer them, they don't check in unless something reminds them to. These are the friends who will happily hang out if you invite them, respond if you text them, and show up if you make plans. But if you stopped reaching out, months could pass without hearing from them. Not because they dislike you, but because connection only happens for them when someone else starts it. And then there's the hardest one to notice. Over time, you may have become the listener. You're the person people vent to, the person who's calm, understanding, and good at holding space. Friends come to you when they're overwhelmed, annoyed, or stressed, and you listen without judgment. The problem is that once someone starts seeing you in that role, they often stop seeing you as someone who needs attention too. You become the place they talk, not someone they're curious about. They don't ask questions because unconsciously that's not what they come to you for. So what does this actually say about the friendship? It depends on the pattern. If someone occasionally forgets to ask questions, but shows up for you in other ways, that's normal human imperfection. If they don't ask much but still remember what you tell them and act on it later, they probably care more than it seems. But if someone consistently talks about themselves, never checks in, and only engages when you're asking questions, that's not just a communication quirk. That's a one-sided dynamic. And at that point, it does say something about them as a friend, even if it doesn't say everything about them as a person. They might be kind, funny, reliable in other areas, or genuinely struggling with their own stuff. But in the context of your relationship, they're not showing up as an engaged friend. Friendship isn't just about being physically present or responding when spoken to. It requires some basic level of curiosity and awareness of the other person. If someone never asks how you're doing, never circles back to things you've shared, and never leaves room in the conversation for your experiences, they're not participating in a two-way connection. They're treating the relationship like a place to unload, vent, or be validated. In that dynamic, you end up functioning less like a friend and more like an unpaid therapist, listening, affirming, holding space, while your own inner life goes largely unseen. This is why it starts to feel so draining. You don't feel angry at first, you feel tired. You notice that you're sharing less because no one's asking, You stop saying anything because it seems so one-sided. You start to feel like you're talking into a void. And the worst part is realizing that if you stop putting in effort, the friendship might quietly fade without them ever noticing. So what do you do about it? The first step is to stop carrying the entire conversation. Not dramatically, not to test them. Just notice what happens when you don't ask the next question. Let a pause exist. Let the conversation end where it naturally would. Some people will suddenly realize, oh, I haven't asked anything, and adjust. Others won't. That tells you a lot. In some cases, it's worth trying something simpler before calling it out directly. Instead of waiting to be asked, start talking about yourself and see what happens. Bring up what's been going on in your life without an opening question, and notice whether they lean in or stay focused on themselves. A lot of people aren't intentionally ignoring you. They're so caught up in their own thoughts that they don't even realize the conversation never shifted your way. When you speak up, some of them will suddenly engage, ask follow-ups, and realize they've been missing half the exchange. If that happens, it's a good sign. But if they barely react, change the subject back to themselves, or seem uninterested, that tells you just as much as a direct conversation would. The real decision comes down to what role you're okay playing in someone's life. Not every friend needs to be the person you talk to about your fears, your goals, or what's actually going on beneath the surface. Some friends are great for grabbing a drink, sending memes, or talking about work and hobbies, and that's enough. The problem starts when you expect emotional curiosity from someone who only ever shows up for surface-level connection. If you're the kind of person who wants to feel noticed, remembered, and understood, you need at least a few relationships where someone asks how you're doing and actually waits for the answer. Being that person doesn't mean you're high maintenance or asking for too much. It means you value reciprocity. When you're always the one asking questions, it usually means you're attentive, emotionally aware, and good at picking up on other people's inner worlds. Those are strengths, but they become draining when you keep offering them to people who never return them. Over time, that imbalance can make you feel invisible or taken for granted. The solution isn't to shut down, stop caring, or become distant with everyone. It's to notice who responds when you open up, who follows up later, and who shows real interest once you stop doing all the work, and then invest more of your energy in those people instead. Not everyone who doesn't ask questions is a bad friend, but someone who never asks, never checks in, and never shows interest in your inner world is showing you their limits. You don't have to hate them for it. You just don't have to keep pretending the friendship is something it isn't.